Welcome everyone to our family business panel. We're so excited to welcome you here today. My name is Cyril Loom, Assistant Director of Venture Development at the Skandalaris Center for Interdisciplinary Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We're excited about today's event and we have a lot to discuss with our great panel. So we'll jump right in. As the hub of innovation and entrepreneurship at Washington University, Skandalaris Center is committed to providing a collaborative and welcoming event experience. To ensure this, we ask that you actively and respectively engage everyone participating. To facilitate networking and connections, please introduce yourself in the chat and share your LinkedIn profile if you wish. We're excited to have you all join to hear from our panelists as we discuss the advantages and pitfalls of family-owned businesses. Our moderators today are Sue Rosenhain, Peter Baumgarten, and Bart Hamilton. We welcome Sue, who serves as Skandalaris Center's National Council member. Sue's educational background and early career in Australia was in finance. Sue joined Krita 30 years ago to establish their Hong Kong and China offices and product supply chain capabilities. As president of Krita, Sue manages a large global team spanning 15 offices around the world who deliver scaled marketing experiences and leverage the power to play to connect consumer with some of the world's biggest brands. Thank you for being here with us today, Sue.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. Peter's the Koch Professor of Practice of Family Enterprise at Washington University in St. Louis. Dr. Baumgarten is also the Director of Koch Center for Family Business and the Faculty Director for the Center of Experiential Learning at Olin, a university center that runs for-profit and nonprofit student-led strategies, consultant engagement in both the St. Louis region and around the globe. Thank you for joining us today, Peter.
It's great to be here.
Great. And our panelists for today are Kristi Tacony Humes of Tacony Corporations, Ayana Klein of Three Ducks Design, and Kim Loyet of Honeymoon Chocolates. Tacony Corporations is a 75-year family-owned, privately held business headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. Tacony operates in 8 locations in the US, including Europe and China. Tacony distributes and manufactures diverse products and services through multi-channels in the home sewing, home floor care, and commercial floor care industries. We're excited to have you here with us, Kristi.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Ayana is currently a senior at Washington University in St. Louis. She has been building the Three Ducks global platform over the past 2 years with a goal to support STEM learning in communities around the world with limited access and to foster an awareness of the diversity in communities and cultures across the globe. Thanks for joining us, Ayana.
Thank you.
Cam's academic career began at Illinois Wesleyan University, where he earned a BS in business. After moving to St. Louis, Cam enrolled at Washington University, where he ultimately earned an MBA in May of 2021. St. Louis has been home to Cam family and his startup Honeymoon Chocolates since 2017. Thanks for being here with us, Cam.
Thank you, Cyril.
And so, as you all have noted, we have such an awesome panel. I'm really excited to get started. Before we start this conversation, we want to get a sense of what everyone is hoping to get out of today's event. Jessica, if you would please launch the poll so we can get a sense of what everyone is hoping to get. Great, thank you for sharing. It looks like most individuals are looking for snippets of wisdom from both, seasoned and new family business owners. So we're excited and we will look forward to having a great event today. And following this discussion, I'm gonna hand it over to Peter, but we're gonna utilize the breakout rooms with panelists and moderators in each room to have a more focused Q&A session after our main room moderator section. Thank you all. Peter, if you can take us off.
Wonderful. Yes, I was looking for the option in that list about not wanting to stumble. What I was hoping to get out of that session was not wanting to fail my moderation thing, but it wasn't one of my 4 options. So, really looking forward to this discussion for a number of different reasons. One, because of the fact that it's been fun to interact with some of my former students, and then also to meet some new faces. And I think you'll be really impressed by the group that we have here today. And then the second one is actually me putting on my hat of all things family business. What's interesting about the world of entrepreneurship is we oftentimes think of family businesses as things that emerge over time. So a good example of this is I was talking to a 6th generation member of a large agribusiness investment group earlier on today. And they talked about the fact that oftentimes it was not intended to be a family-owned business, but oftentimes it became that way over time. And so as a result, the entrepreneurship literature has kind of missed thinking about the role of family structure in driving these choices. But think about the proverbial garage that many businesses start in. Many times it's the living room, or it's the family garage, or it's people coming together as siblings saying, we want to do something different. And so as a result, those decisions, those choices about who you partner with and how you partner, especially when it overlaps in the context of family, can be a really interesting thing to explore in the context of starting businesses. And then secondarily, as we talk about innovation, especially with Kristi a bit later on, the idea of driving something new when all of a sudden the quote unquote old is represented by past generations of the family and past iterations of what the business has done in the past provides a really rich context by which someone can pursue entrepreneurship, evolving the business moving forward. So today is going to be a great example of how we might be able to leverage some wisdom about how that can be done well, hopefully some insights around, I wish I had done X, Y, or Z a bit different, and lead you all to be able to see this landscape in a slightly new way. All right, so we heard everyone's bio formally, but what I would love to do is to go around and hear the bio from the perspective of family, right? So we have 3 organizations here represented. All of them hit on family in a slightly different way. So if you can say, here is my business, and really we are linked into the world of family through X, that would be fantastic. So Kristi, why don't we have you get started on this, because your story might be the most clear about how it's a family business, but it would be great to hear from you there on that.
So I get to start it off, huh?
Kick us off. Kick us off.
Okay. Well, as Cyril introduced me, I'm Christina Tocci. I'm the CEO of Tacony Corporation. I'm 3rd generation Tacony family member. My grandfather started the business 75 years ago this year. So we've been in business a little while, so that's exciting. And I have the true pleasure of carrying on the dream and dream of my grandfather, which is pretty cool in my perspective, because it's just an honor, really and truly, to see how a business that was started in the basement of his home after getting out of the war and now to what it is today, 75 years later, is really exciting. We're primarily distribution. We manufacture. We've really become a omni-channel business. You know, now having e-commerce and coming up with different business models that are completely different than the way they were back then. So it's fun to be a part of a family business. There's many good things about it. There's also comes its challenges too as well. So I hope that answers the question, Peter.
That's perfect, Chris. It's perfect.
Okay.
Let's go to Ayana next, right? So a slightly different angle on the same question, but tell us a bit about your business and how it is tied into your family.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Ayana. I am a rising senior at WashU, and I started 3 Ducks Design with my younger brother just about 4 years ago now. And we were both still in high school at the time. So my brother was a incoming junior and freshman. I was an incoming senior in high school. So that's just the family angle of it, I guess.
Good, great. So really came out of the 2 siblings having a decision and then involving other family members over time. Did other family members come in, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, my parents, my mom and my dad are both a part of the company. My mom was a pediatrician for over 20 years and then quit to work for me and my brother. And my dad still has another job, but he also helps out a lot with, especially with the financials.
Good. And by the way, at some point, I would love to be able to say the same. At some point, my parents quit to work for me. So that's a nice frame that you have right there. Cam, slightly different story for your entry into Honeymoon. Tell me a bit about what your business does and how it overlaps with family.
You bet. So Honeymoon Chocolates crafts bean to bar chocolate. The process is a lot different than you'd expect. Takes about 2.5, 3 days to go from bean all the way to bar. And I did that whole process in a dorm room kitchen as a hobby at Illinois Wesleyan University. So I had 3 roommates who were gracious enough to let me make chocolate in the dorm room. They ate some pretty bad chocolate in the beginning, but they would eat a ton of it. And it was a great support system and accountability system for my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. We started this in our dorm room, and there's a photo of our closet that was just full of craft chocolate making supplies and equipment, a big 60-kilogram bag of cocoa beans that we lugged up 3 flights of stairs. So our family, while a little bit different, consisted of my girlfriend and I, and then our 3 roommates who held accountability in the beginning. And now it's kind of morphed into husband and wife now, with Haley and I running Honeymoon. Haley is a first-year intern at St. Louis University for pediatrics. So her ability to help out is limited. So my role has grown significantly, filling her role, but also being able to share the growth of Honeymoon with her and make these big decisions with her in the evenings when she has time.
Good. And Cam, just a clarification question there. Those 3 friends, did any of them stand up in your wedding? Did they make it into the wedding itself?
They did, yeah. Yes, they did. It was really, really great to have them there on that day.
Love it. Love it. All right. So I want to just do one more rapid fire question for each of you, and then we'll dig into each of your stories a bit more. And in particular, I'm curious the extent to which being tied into a family is a unique selling proposition for your business or somewhat unrelated. And we have a range here, right, Cam? Even the fact that you use the language honeymoon in there implies something about the family side of the story. But Cam, maybe you can start us off and we'll go in reverse order. Do you feel that this is a value proposition that the customers resonate with, and why?
So we're lucky enough that we sell chocolate in the sense that it's a romantic product just to begin with. So the amount of time and effort that goes into this chocolate is not wasted on the name itself. So just the fact that we are also a duo, my wife and I running this business, just adds to the value. I would say there's definitely a value add to the name and also to the effort that Haley and I have put into the business.
Okay, good. And by the way, some of you are on this call because of the fact that you might have access to test some of this chocolate later on. So we're looking forward to doing some sampling here later on. Ayana, same question. So do people know about the fact that it's a brother and a sister and a set of parents involved? Is it not known by your customer? Does it resonate with them or not?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually like a really big part of our company is our story and our background. So especially when we first started, we just started off by we just like show our product at like farmers markets and like little kid soccer games. So like the younger siblings could come play with the product. And when the parents would come over, they would see like 2 teenagers standing there saying that it was their company. And that was like a big thing. And that's also helped us a lot even now. Because we get like at expos when we present our product, we also, after we tell them that we started, they're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then they ask if like they buy the product and they ask if we'll go speak to their students and like to tell them about entrepreneurship and what it's like to be an entrepreneur and in school and just like what it's like starting a business. And yeah, so it's definitely really big part of our company for sure.
Good. And Kristi, same question. When it comes to the family-owned piece of it, is it a part of your marketing? Do you find that that's shared or different than your competitors? And how does it tend to resonate with your customer group?
Sure. So it's a little different depending upon the particular business since we're in 3, but I will say, family is a core value for us. So it's really how we attract employees. It's really our suppliers and all of our customers. We're like family doing business with families. So it's a huge part of our culture and it's a huge part of our value system. I think we tend to use it definitely with our customers, and it helps us stand out a little bit, especially in our core businesses, which are more independent retailer and distributor and distribution. our competitors aren't family businesses and we are, and we're selling to family businesses. So it is definitely a selling strategy for us and helps us with our business. Commercial side, it isn't as important, but it does help us take care of our customers in a way that's different than some of our competitors. And so we use it. It helps our business and we enjoy it actually.
Yeah, great. So we're going to go through a couple of questions targeted towards the group. And as a reminder here, we're going to spend a little under half of our time in this broader group, and then shortly after allow you to hop into smaller conversations with these entrepreneurs. But Cam, I want to dig into a question that we talked about in advance of the session. In particular, we started to talk about risk profile. So I've oftentimes thought about that in the context of myself. I love reading about entrepreneurs. I love listening to how I built this. But yet at the same point, I pursued a career in academia and getting a PhD and have probably a lower tolerance for risk than other people that I'm surrounded with in the entrepreneurial space. So I'm curious, for the two of you as a duo, a couple in this, do you have different preferences around risk, tolerance for risk? And if so, what are the ways that you find a way to mitigate those differences?
It's a great question. So I love to take risk. Ever since I was a little kid skiing, even I would always go down trails that I could not go down. I just love risk. I crave it. So Honeymoon has been a great opportunity to take risk. But at the same time, Haley, my wife, does not like risk, and she's the safe. She always picks the safe option. So whenever I have a risky choice, I run it by Haley because I'd rather not make a decision for the business that shouldn't be made. And whenever I'm able to do that, it's almost like I'm presenting, here's why I want to take this risk. And then I'm able to understand why it's a good decision myself. And Haley also weighs in whether or not it's a good decision. But being able to take risks in a startup or a small business or a family business is super important. But you have to understand if there's a right time to take a risk and a wrong time.
So Cam, maybe we can dig into even one of those pieces in particular. So for many entrepreneurs, they're doing things on the side for a period of time. In fact, I talked to this with many of our students. They'll say, I want to be an entrepreneur. And they feel like they have to essentially leave school and leave their job altogether in order to do that. But many of us start doing some entrepreneurship on the side, a side venture, a side hustle. But one of the big risks is this choice about when does one or both of us go in this full time? When do we pursue something with 40 or 50 hours a week versus 10 hours a week? Did that factor ever go into the way that you all have approached your own decision-making around the time used towards the venture, let alone questions around capital investment and others, just the use of time and the risk around career?
Yeah, so we reached a point with Honeymoon where it was too risky not for me to go full time. We'd have to hire someone else out at a specific rate to do what I was doing and to still grow the business. So it made financial sense for me to push the business and put more time in.
That's interesting. Yeah, the idea of kind of it felt too risky to stay out of it, to give up control. That was the thing that flipped the script. Was that a mindset that you had coming in? Was that something that your spouse brought into the framing?
I think that it was something that Haley brought in. I was more willing to push this full time earlier, but we waited until it was the right time. And then we took the leap of faith, and now I'm full time with Honeymoon.
There you go. So Ayana, I'm going to take a slightly different angle here. So imagine that my colleague Bart and I are starting a business, and we have a friend, Amanda, that's also starting this business. We oftentimes have to play a role in determining what each of us does and doesn't do in the business. So maybe one of us is the operator and another person is the face of the business and someone's doing marketing. But some of those have higher visibility. Some of those have different skill sets. In the context of having two people initially involved in the business that were siblings, and then eventually adding on parents along the way, how did you determine the unique roles and skill sets and fits that you could job craft to? And was there ever a time where you said, well, I want to do this, but your brother wanted to do it simultaneously? And how did you deal with that competing set of priorities?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess just to start off the answer to that question, I mean, I guess it's a little bit different in a family business because I mean, at least with me and my brother, like we grew up together. So I think just even throughout like childhood and like all of school, like we kind of knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. So for example, like I was really good at organization where he wasn't quite as good at that per se, but like he was good at other things that I wasn't as good at. So I think just knowing that in advance was something unique that come to starting a company as a family. So I think like when we first started, and just came up with like the idea of the product and the company, we didn't really necessarily have designated roles per se. It was more just like, let's brainstorm ideas. We'd sit down as a family, come up with a bunch of ideas, figure out which ones we thought as a family were good and which ones maybe weren't so good. And over time, especially like as I went into college and wasn't home as much, we started taking on more distinct roles. So like, for example, for now, he does a lot of the manufacturing. So he'll be at the factory a lot of the time. And he has a few friends or people that he takes to the factory, and they all work for, like, especially on the weekends. And then whereas I would do things a little bit more remote from St. Louis in school, such as like reaching out to people and social media and like a bunch of other things. So I think that kind of just as we like continue to move on with life and just both are in different locations at different times, we kind of, the roles alternate a little bit.
Good. So Ayana, I want to do one other kind of tactical follow-up. Remember that this group is looking for wisdom and insight about how they might approach their own businesses moving forward. Was there any strategy that you all use, or perhaps your parents use, to create family harmony in the midst of this strategy that either worked really well, or perhaps, to share a failing, maybe didn't work quite as intended, that you wish you had done differently? Any one of the four of you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think like one of the big things is just to set aside like specific time to talk as a family about the company, where you're not going to talk about other things at the same time. So for example, we would have like meetings every few days or every week to discuss like just about 3 Ducks, like where we want to go in the future, where we're at, what we're doing well, what we're not doing so well. And I guess like one of the hard things about that, at least for me personally, sometimes is that like it's like just it comes up in everyday discussion. So like sometimes like maybe you're not in that right mindset about talking about the company, you're just talking about something different as a family and it comes up. So I think just having that like separate designated time to also just talk about your business is really important.
Good. I love it. So Kristi, we're going to pivot to you here for a short bit. So you represent a different stage of life of a family business. 75 years ago, your grandfather set up this business, and here you are continuing on his dream moving forward. One of the themes that comes across consistently in the conversations that I have with rising leaders in the organization is the challenge of innovating. When innovating means new, and new inherently is making a judge on the old. So imagine, for example, I'm in an automotive firm and we've been in auto forever, and I'm the next generation saying that we need to diversify into aspects of healthcare because it will help us in our strategy. And I think electrification is going to be the demise of our core business. Well, that's one thing to say it if you are unrelated to the previous generation. But it can be tricky if all of a sudden that new idea, the novel idea, might be felt like a critique amongst those that represented generations prior. So I wonder if you could walk us through some of those processes, if it's ever come up at all, how you handle it, and how you approach making sure you have continuity with the old, while at the same point, appropriate freshness when it comes to your approach.
Sure. So I have to say, in my particular role and in my family, my dad has made it very easy for me and for us as family members, because he realized that the business needed to go through some innovation and transformation, and really did a nice job of letting go and transitioning that so that I was free to be able to make some of those changes. But also, I'm very sensitive to the fact that he built a very successful company, and so between he and my grandfather. And so we did something well for a while. So as my job is to really blend the history and traditions and some of the things that they did put in the foundation to get us here, and keep those, while bringing in those new ideas and fresh perspectives and getting us to a relevant current company that people want to work for or do business with, or just to be able to sustain and survive for the long term. And it can be sensitive. You know, I think if you stick to your core values and you keep those lines of communication open and are very careful about just communicating those changes and why, it makes it a lot easier to be able to evolve as an organization. And I'm lucky that my dad was open to that and knew that that our business needed those changes and needed the energy of someone new coming in and really innovating and coming up with different ways that we needed to run for the future.
Great framing. So we're going to do one more question for you, Kristi, and then shortly we're going to go into the breakouts and dig into a few of these things in a little bit more depth with each of our respondents. And in particular, Kristi, I'm curious this question around how do you bring in outsiders to the business? And I'll tee it up this way. One of the things that comes up somewhat clearly in the data is on average, family businesses can lag slightly the publicly traded firm in terms of professionalism and even the approach of bringing in outside voices, right? Bringing in new hires that are top in class. So that's a challenge for businesses. It's not by any means a challenge that can't be overcome. There's a lot of family businesses that do this quite well. But I'm curious how you all have approached that. What have been the pathways by which you professionalize the firm, bring in talent, incentivize them appropriately, so on and so forth?
Yeah, sure. That's definitely the case, right? It does. I think family businesses are a little bit different in that way. They're a little behind and maybe a little less professional, especially as they grow. So when you're young in the business and it's newer, you tend to you're just trying to get it done. You're trying to build your business, and you're not as you don't know what you don't know either. And so you're just really trying to do what you know how to do. And as I've brought in, new executives, new managers, new people throughout the organization, that's brought some professionalism to the company. I'll give you an example. So years ago, contracts, we didn't have supplier contracts. It was a handshake. And that doesn't fly today. Obviously, you can't get by without an official contract. We didn't turn in expense reports like we should to keep some of those guidelines and controls within the business. And so you have to be able to separate how we used to do it and evolve to how we need to do it today and be open to that. And I think just blending new people with some people that have been here for a long time is a really great mix, because it brings some people with perspectives on how to do things differently than you have in the past. One of our values is finding a better way. And I really love that, but that's part of our culture and part of our business. So if we catch ourselves, even if it's working, we really focus on how do we do it better and differently and change the way we're doing it from what it was in the past. And it's really, I believe, has made us a more professional organization and more 2021 versus 1970. So
I love that theme of bringing in external voices, bringing in external perspectives, sometimes competition that pushes us in this direction, and having a value set that allows us to reinvent and think about those new needs as they emerge. Well, a lot of great conversation in the upfront framing, but one of the things that we want to do next is to dig into smaller groups to pursue some of these themes and threads with even more depth. So my fearless leader is going to move us into our process around breakout groups. Talk us through it.
Great, thanks, Peter. So we're about to get into breakout groups, as Peter just alluded. We've been having some great conversations, right? So you guys are going to be divided into breakout groups. Jessica will put you to a breakout group, and you'll hear more from these great panelists about their journey through their adventures with their either their wives or their families. But please, Jessica, when you're ready, you could drop them into their breakout groups.
You're muted.
We had a couple people still in the room that if you'd like to go to a different room or anything we can do to assist to get you over there, just let us know. Happy to see David on here. He and I just had a meeting before this, so welcome him to join. So always love to see the students in attendance.
I don't see an option to self-join a breakout room, so people might not be able to do that.
We don't have it set up that way. But if you want to go to a room, I can send you there.
Sure.
Where do you want to
Send
go?
me. Doesn't matter.
Where do you want-
Wherever you need somebody.
You're going to go hang out with Bart and Cam.
Okay.
Mike, you want to go anywhere?
I do. So there was somebody I used to work with named Marcia Moore, and I saw somebody by the same name. So I'm curious if you could put me in there, and maybe I know
We're
her, maybe I
going to
don't. But
Kristi and Sue.
sounds great. Thank you.
Everett, you want to go anywhere?
No, thank you. I
Okay.
am just tagging along for today. I'm not feeling 100%.
I hear you.
I'm there
Cyril,
with
you want to stay here or you want to go network?
I'm staying here. Allergies are still getting me.
I hear you. The other two have been assigned, but David or anybody else who would like to be specially assigned, let me know. Happy to move you wherever you want to go.
Kristi.
Kristi. Great. Welcome everyone back. My room had a great discussion that was led by Peter. I'm going to hand it over to Peter here for about 5 to 7 minutes to kind of just figure out what the other conversations were like in the other groups. So Peter, if you could take us off.
Always come back in muted, right? I should know all my Zoom tips and tricks at this point, but I'm still learning over time. That was a great conversation. We had a small group in there talking through some of the dynamics around ed tech, some of the dynamics around how you think about raising capital. Let me identify maybe a few themes that I thought were interesting moving forward, and then we'll do the same, Bart and Sue, when it came to your group. So one of the conversations that we had was around the incentives for an entrepreneur to enter into a family business. So we had one of my former students in that discussion, which was great, Ben Stein, joining us for a bit. And he was a part of a family business at Olin, but decided to kind of leave and go to the Valley. And part of what he was highlighting was the ability to do a bunch of different jobs. I'm not sure that I want to stay in one pathway for the next 40 or 50 years of my own career, which I think is an interesting question for rising family leaders. We talked a little bit about taking on capital, the choice to do so. We talked about some of the research indicating that family businesses sometimes are reticent to take on a lot of debt, which can be beneficial and also detrimental in some ways. And then we talked at the very tail end about choices around this ed tech space more broadly defined and where it might evolve moving forward. Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz, the venture capital fund, has famously said that one of the 3 sectors that is ripe for disruption is education and higher education in particular. So we spent time talking about the mechanisms that might be used for forms of education, amongst other things, to drive some of that value. Bart, what came up in your conversation?
Yeah, I think we had some really interesting insights about the dynamics inside the household and how those relate to the business. I think one question we asked Cam was, who has the final say when it's a husband and wife? Who has the final say in the business when you have to make a decision? And how does ownership kind of work in a family business like this, where it's a husband and wife? But I think that's a big issue that we often think about as an investor. This can be very important to investors, is who has the final say. And I think it sounds like they've been able to work through that aspect pretty well. We also talked about the issue of capital, like you, but kind of more family financial risk. You know, how much of the family's assets are devoted to the business? We might want to diversify a little bit, because as Cam's human capital is invested in the business, and as well as the family's financial capital. And so kind of talked about that too. And then we talked about why St. Louis for a craft chocolate business? Why not on the coast? And Cam talked a lot about some of his very exciting expansion plans for opening a retail location in Clayton. So I think we're all really, really excited to frequent that location. I know I have it marked on my calendar. Let us know, and we'll be in line at the start. So I think those were the sorts of things that that we discussed.
Cam, I intentionally did not invite my wife Kelly into this conversation because I feel like I will be frequenting your Clayton location a little bit too much. Sue, same question to kind of wrap us up from the room perspective. What came up in those conversations that was of note?
We talked a lot about succession planning, the whole idea of whether to sell or not, how to train family members who might be coming up, what the best kind of timing is, and how difficult it can be for a father to let go to a daughter. In Kristi's situation, she had a very smooth transition, but we know that that's not always the case. We talked about roles and responsibilities and how important it was between non-management family members and family members who are part of management to understand what their roles and responsibilities were. Whether that's in discussions about debt or dividends or how a company is going to innovate, and to really set up those roles and responsibilities very clearly in advance. We had Ayana's mother in our group as well, which was really wonderful. And she talked about some of the challenges around changes in family life cycle. So when you have people who are involved in the business going off to school, or in time potentially having children, and how their lives are changing and how the family business needs to evolve and change, and the people within it have to evolve and change to kind of accommodate all of the different needs in a family. We came to the conclusion really that communication, very clear communication, is absolutely key in all of those stages, and with all of the different family members, no matter what generation you're in a family business, and that you can really keep relationships positive, and family business can be a really positive, wonderful thing when you have really good communication amongst everybody.
Love it, love it. Well, let me make one final comment here, and then one rapid fire question for the group to end us. So the comment is around the role of Skandalaris. So for those of you that are students or related to the center in many ways, I just want to highlight this. This is an amazing resource that you can and should take advantage of when it comes to understanding how to grow and build your business, whether family or not. And both with Ayana and Cam, the story of their business is intimately woven into the story of Skandalaris. So here's my last rapid fire 15 seconds of pop question, and it's really around this piece of advice. So if you were to give anyone here in the line one piece of advice about how to approach starting a business, or around succession, or around fundraising, what would be the thing that stands out to you right now? Let's go Cam first, because I started you last. Go ahead, Cam.
I would say you'll never know the decision that you didn't make. You'll never know the outcome of that choice. So just make a decision.
Cam, that is existentially terrifying. Now I have to think about all of my choices that I didn't make over time. But nonetheless, I'll take it. Ayana, same question. What's one piece of advice that you might offer to the participants on the line?
Yeah, similar to what was just said, but I was going to say communication, I think, is one of the biggest or most important parts of especially running any company, but especially a family company.
Right. And Kristi, last piece of advice for the group.
Yeah, I would say that it's really, the business is providing for the family, but it really needs to be treated as its own business and run that way versus the family running the business. You have to separate those, otherwise you won't make the best decisions based on what the business needs versus what the family needs.
That's a spot on point, and one that has come up consistently time after time when I'm meeting with family business leaders, the idea of identifying what's the family purpose, what's the business purpose, and really making sure they're synergistic versus the dysfunctional iterations that might emerge here. Great insights from the entire panel. I'm going to turn it back over again to Cyril to be able to close this out here, but it's been a real pleasure to have you all on the line and great to have all three of you involved in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, Koch Center, for this partnership event. Peter, Sue, and Bart, thank you for moderating this event. Cam, Kristi, and Ayana, thank you for being panelists and sharing about your companies. Audience, I want to share about our next event. From the poll at the beginning of this event, most individuals stated that they were here to receive snippets of wisdom from both seasoned and new family business owners. Well, we want you to continue building on that and receiving snippets from great business owners. So please join us at the next Skandalaris event next Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. for Tech Entrepreneurship Panel. Once again, it's for next week, Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. and I will drop that in the chat. Otherwise, I'd like to say thank you for joining us at the Family Business Panel. We really enjoyed it and we hope to have many more of these panels. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.